Hey guys, what's going on? It's your host, Brendan Whiting. Welcome back to another episode of the Master Closer podcast. Today, I've got a very special guest. It's one of my good buddies, Michael Mojo.
Hey.
Now, this cunt is from Australia, first of all, so I can say that. And today what we're going to talk about is this, peak human performance. You know, I've known this guy for a couple weeks now. And
We go way back.
Oh, we go way back, baby. No, he's a beast, man. From Australia. I'm going to let him tell you his story, but he specializes in coaching men and women to reach their true potential in life. I've found out that he's got a great heart. He's a professional at what he does. So I feel like we're going to drop some heat on this interview. So number one, brother, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming on, my man.
I like
all the way from Australia.
Just came here just for this.
Just for this interview. So, yeah, number one, dude, here's how I typically like to start. Like, I want to know the story. You know what I'm saying? A lot of my viewers are, you know, younger, just getting started. So it's so cool to see like a guy like you who's, you know, earning $1 million a year, millions of dollars a year, and you got, you know, a lot of good things going for you. So,
thank you.
You know, tell me about your origin story, how it all started, and how you got to where you're at right now.
Yeah, cool. So, look, when I was a kid, I think, look, I don't like to overindulge in the origin story, right? Because everyone's got their past and everyone has that stuff. And I think either two ways you're going to go. You're going to become the victim or you're going to become the victor. And, you know, we all have that choice depending on our past. So, because I wasn't really, my parents were young when they had me. They were 17 and 19. And growing up from a young age, I saw a lot of partying. My parents are very social, so we were always like at parties and everything like that. So I saw crazy shit going down. People just drinking to the point of like stupidity every weekend, people passing out, throwing up on themselves. You know, I remember this night where we were at a place where they used to go up in the Riverland in South Australia. So I used to go water skiing and wakeboarding and motorbike riding and so on from a really young age. And I just remember,
cat, huh?
I remember waking up in the middle of the night and hearing this rumbling. And when I walked outside, there was a whole bunch of bikers that had rocked up. And we're talking patch bikers as well. We're not talking like, you know, just a couple of fat dudes with hairy chests, just that wear a leather vest. And that was sort of the environment that I got brought up in. But from there, really, the whole origin story starts from going to school, getting bad grades, put into special classes. My mum always wanted me to do really well at school, as I think most parents do.
What did your parents do, by the way?
My mum was a stay-at-home mum until I think I was about 4 or 5, maybe 5, and she started working. So it was just when I started school. And my dad worked in a warehouse, so he was sort of like a warehouse manager.
Nice. So no entrepreneurs in the family.
No high-paying jobs or anything like that. Like they essentially started at the bottom. Much credit to my parents as well. They're both hard workers. My dad always worked 2 jobs. Mum was always busy working and stuff like that as well. I remember walking to my sister's kindergarten and picking her up from kindergarten and having to take her home. And I used to put on some toast for her and spread it with some jam or some peanut butter or something like that. And I would look after her because mum and dad both worked. I think these days you go to jail if you do that shit to your kids. But, you know...
Australia's different, bro. Well, dude, Well, you know, to add to that, even if you didn't have entrepreneurial parents, you're very lucky if you grew up in a house of hardworking parents, at least, right? Because then if you stumble your way into entrepreneurship and you've got that hard work, you know, that's going to be key. So that's cool. So you did have hardworking parents, like you took that, you took that away from them.
Yeah. And so when I go back, like being a bit older now, like I just turned 41 only a week ago. Looking back now, I have a lot better respect for what my parents did for me. But back when I was younger, I didn't really understand it because I just had these hardworking parents. We never had any money. I remember playing basketball and my mum would tell me that I couldn't afford basketball shoes, so I'd play in these shoes that were called Aerosports. They're essentially like cheap shoes that you buy from the cheap shop. They would hurt my feet. Like
AN1 or like...
cheaper than that. Like, I mean, man,
because I used to wear those.
If I could afford them, that would have been sick. No, it was like worse than that. But all the other kids would wear Reeboks and Nikes, you know, that have Jordans and pumps and things like that. And you know, I have these Aerosport shoes, so I got called POV by a couple of the other kids, which was short for poverty, because I was like the broke kid.
I got a question for you.
Yeah.
So do you feel like having grown up without a lot of money, is that a powerful motivator for you today
Hell yeah.
to be a high level earner?
I teach this a lot in my courses and events,
Yeah.
and I teach this as well to a lot of coaches. So your voids actually become your values. So part of the reason why I'm driven financially now is because I didn't have money when I was a kid.
I like that. Your voids become your values.
Yeah, it was my good friend, Dr. John
cool.
DeMartini, who's a colleague of mine. He's an expert in value systems and value structures, or a field of study called axiology, which is the study of value systems. But part of the reason why, I'm pretty jacked now for a 41-year-old guy, not super jacked or anything like that, but part of the reason why I train every day, and I tend to look after myself, was because I was a fat kid. So I remember being in grade 5 swimming class, and I wore a t-shirt. I was the only kid wearing a t-shirt in the swimming carnival because I just hated the way I looked. I was fat and had all this flab and shit.
Bro, it's crazy. The most of the successful and jacked entrepreneurs I know grew up poor and fat.
Yeah.
So your voids must become your values. That's pretty cool.
I was never attractive to girls. Like, when I was in my teenage years, most of my mates had girlfriends. I never had a girlfriend. I was like the ugly kid. I had bright red hair, freckles, pasty white skin. If someone was going to be like the fucked up kid that wasn't going to get anywhere, that was me. And I just got to a point where I was 15. I got expelled from school. My mum always wanted me to do really well at school, and she put a lot of pressure on me to do well.
Yeah.
I mean, her siblings, now when I look back, her siblings all went to college or university. She didn't. She fell pregnant. Her family are Catholic. Both my grandparents, my grandmother was a stay-at-home mum. My grandpa was really poor, but worked his way up to upper-level management of a big company in Australia. And he was just a hard worker, but very, very smart guy.
Yeah.
So he never went to college or university, but he was always learning and always studying. So that's where I think I get it from.
That's awesome, dude.
So he sort of rose up in the corporate world. And so all he ever wanted, his dad died when he was 13. So he became the man of the house. He was the only child, and his mum never worked. So he went out and got a job at 13 and left school. So I think for my grandfather, having kids that went to university and had that opportunity was really important to him.
Yeah.
My mum fucked up, got pregnant to my bogan dad. In Australia, we call him a bogan. Over here, the rednecks.
Oh, I was like new Aussie slang.
Yeah.
What's that? Bogan?
Bogan.
Dude, I'm stealing that one.
Done.
Faux show. I got a question for you again.
Yeah.
So, because I know you're the peak performance coach, right? So I'm curious to hear your thoughts on a lot of these mindset things. So I hear you talking about a lot about your childhood and your grandparents, their background. How do you feel like your background growing up affects the rest of your life once you become an adult?
Yeah.
What impact do you feel like that has on somebody?
Man, that's a deep question. And I can explain it from lots of different fields of science. Like, I don't have a definitive answer. Like, I'm not there's a lot of people out there who say, like, you'll hear this in the finance world, like, the market's going to crash. Bro, if you can see the future, fucking hell, man. Like, let's go buy some lottery tickets, because if you can tell the future, man, we're winning cash.
Exactly.
The truth is, no one knows anything about the future. The only thing that we do know is we can have a look back at patterns of what happens. So we can sort of determine what may happen in the future based on economic cycles and so on, or governmental cycles, or there's all these different cycles that happen over time, but no one can tell the future. Not that I'm aware of anyway. So a lot of when you ask these questions, I tend to not be black and white and look through it just through one lens. It's through lots of different fields of science, and I try to piece it together. So when I look back at our past, there's a few different things that impact human behavior, right? So we have genetics. Now, what are genetics? It's essentially an encoding. It's information that both your mother and your father have. And from the moment that the sperm hits the egg, that you've got genetic coding, which is you get told that you've got 2 legs, 2 arms, a head. And then when the fetus is growing in utero, you then have epigenetic tagging, which then is the mother's emotions and hormonal cycles influence how the fetus grows. So we both have parental impact from our past. We have epigenetic tagging based on the environment that our mother grows up in. Now, there's some really cool studies. So if you have a look at a child that's brought up in a very calm environment, they tend to have more evolved prefrontal cortex. So these are the kids that are highly intelligent, but they may not be as coordinated. You have a stressful environment and the mother has more stress hormone, the child may be more athletically gifted.
This is pre-birth? Or
this is epigenetic tagging that's happening pre-birth. So the brain development of a newborn child, the brain's already starting to figure out how to work based on external environment.
So if your mom's smoking cigarettes while you're in the womb, then you're going to come out like Ronaldo with those soccer skills.
I wouldn't say that. I would say that if there's some sort of stress impact, and everyone handles stress in different ways, right?
Yeah.
And this is why it's really hard, because when we look at these factors, we could say, well, if a mother is extremely stressed, but what does extremely stressed mean? Because I've looked at people who I work with people who run billion-dollar companies.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, someone sued me for $50 million. I just got the court case in. Oh, well, let's go out for dinner.
Exactly.
Someone else is like, someone cut me off in traffic and I wanted to murder the guy. And I'm like, whoa, shit. Like,
yeah, that's more so perspective, would you say?
Totally. And
what percentage of like our mindset plays a role in that, and like
everything,
being able to overcome the genetic, the genetic coding that we have, the way we were raised, things like that.
So these are great questions. So you've got the epigenetic tagging, then the child comes out, and then now we use our perceptions. So we have perceptions from, obviously we know our main receptors, right? So we have our eyes, our ears, touch, smell, taste, and so on.
Yeah.
Now, when you look in depth into different research, there's so much information being fed to the brain. So you've got things like Golgi tendon organs, so stretch receptors in the ligaments and the tendons. So that is feeding impact about our environment. There's all this different information. We have temperature sensors in our digestive tract that tell us whether the food that we're eating is hot or cold, and it will tell our digestive system how our reflexes need to work or the muscle contractions need to work. So there's all this different information. We just think of 5 senses, but there's a lot more.
Yeah.
So when the child comes out, there's this big world around us, and so it starts to see things, hear things, and different things tend to impact different people depending on genetics and epigenetics.
Yeah.
So some people are more receptive to stress, some people less receptive to stress. There's a whole bunch of different factors, so I can't just generalize it.
Yeah.
But what will tend to happen is we start to develop this awareness of our external environment. Then what we do is, through our perceptions, we then start to create stories, beliefs, and meanings. Those stories, beliefs, and meanings then start to create how we perceive the world around us. That then triggers our emotions.
Would you say that those three, what were those again?
Story, belief, and meaning.
Is that like the core human identity?
It could be.
And internally, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it pretty much is, right? So our identity can be crafted from a whole bunch of different things, but story, belief, and meaning is definitely 3 massive impacts.
Yeah.
But it's a perception of how you perceive yourself in the external world.
Exactly. Well, like what we talk about in our coaching program all the time, and we don't go as deep as you do, which is why I love to, hear your answers to these things. We talk about total recreation. If you want to make more money, like the first step is increasing your identity, which is those 3 pillars you're talking about, correct?
Yep, 100%.
Because that's the core. In order to change the external world, you got to change the internal world, right?
Yes.
So it starts at like your thoughts, the most basic thoughts, the deep stuff, right?
100%. So our perceptions essentially drive everything. If you put different people in different environments, they have a different perception of that environment. Someone in peak hour traffic goes, man, this is bullshit. I'm super stressed. Like, why the fuck does this traffic have to be there all the time? Bro, it's been there for the last 20 years. Exactly. Why are you stressed about it? This should be predictable, right?
Yeah.
Like, you live in LA. You don't think that traffic is going to be a fucking issue?
How do you respond to people, like you personally being a coach who's like takes ultimate accountability for your life? How do you respond to people who are like have the victim mindset?
Just
who are always blaming shit on other people?
Look,
other than calling them a dog cunt, like how do you respond to those people?
YouTube's going to wipe out this account.
Are they really?
No, I don't know.
Oh, I don't know. I was going to say you'll have to upload it from Australia or something. You know what I'm saying?
I don't even know that they let us use those words, but I work in environments where I enjoy working in.
Yeah.
I enjoy working with more driven and accountable people. I don't.
Yeah.
Back many years ago, our events used to be open to the general public, and we were seen as more of like motivation type people. So we would get a whole bunch of people, and they're like, "Oh man, I just need to be motivated." And I was like, "Come on, guys! Like, we can change your life." And
you're trying to please everybody.
Yeah. It was just a different community, and then one day, Jess and myself, that's my wife, we were talking. She's like, the word driven came up, and I was like, our community, the people I love working with are driven. They're hungry. They've got this driven things. And she's like, and I'm like, they're just driven motherfuckers. And she's like, driven motherfuckers.
Another freaking business breakthrough driven by your freaking awesome wife.
100%. And
you defined your ideal client is what you did.
Yeah.
You said these are the people we like to work with the most.
Yep, and our community is called the Driven Mofos now. Yep. So, you're part of the Elliott Army.
Yep.
Ours are the Driven Mofos.
Love that.
Everyone in my community is highly strung, wants to be more, wants to achieve more, never fucking satisfied. Mm-hmm. That doesn't mean that they're not grateful, but I'm never satisfied. Like, I get a win, I'm like, cool, man, we're crushing it.
Yep.
Let's get back to it. Let's keep going. And that doesn't mean that I'm unhappy. I enjoy the drive, and I enjoy the progress more than I enjoy the actual thing, the achievement.
Dude, I've learned the same thing about myself, bro.
Yeah.
I feel like the further down the path you get of success, whatever you consider success, the more you realize that.
100%.
It's funny how that works, bro.
People come into my community and they're like, I just want to be happy. And I'm like, what does that mean? They're like, I just want to pay off my house and buy a caravan and travel around the country. I'm like, are you fucking serious?
When were you your happiest? You were probably happiest when you were on a weight loss journey. When you're freaking scaling your income, scaling your business.
Hell yeah.
That's when you're happiest, dude. It's
growth.
It's simple.
Growth, baby. That's where it all happens. Like, we're sold this delusion. Like, I talk about fantasies a lot in my, and not the like jiggy ones that, you have in your bedroom.
Yeah.
I'm talking about like, a fantasy is essentially a delusion that people create about how life should be or how things should be. Like I just spoke about traffic in LA, right? Like, the delusion is that traffic shouldn't be there. But that ain't never going to happen. A lot of people have delusions in life. Like,
agreed.
When I have money and when I pay off all my debt, then I'm going to be happy.
Oh, that's a good one.
But the truth is, like, all your drive, your ambition, your purpose, everything that you work hard for, like, you get up in the morning, you go to your job, you work hard. The moments that you're most proud of, like, I do a good day's worth of work. Like, sometimes I just clean my office and I sit back and I'm just like, fuck yeah.
It's that feeling of accomplishment, bro.
Exactly what it is. And people think that it's on the other side of like having something physical. It's not. It's in the work and the effort that you put in.
Yeah.
And so I think the greatest accomplishment always comes from the effort more than the attainment. But everyone's always looking for like, or not everybody, probably not the people who are watching this, but people like, when I get to this place, then I'll. And I think then I'll is the most destructive words in the human language.
You're setting yourself up for failure. And you're setting yourself up to get to that point and then be empty.
100%.
Because that's why most of the richest people I've met are the most miserable. Because they kept telling themselves that. And then they get there, they've sacrificed everything. And then they realize, hey, the journey was the best part.
Yeah.
What's next?
There's a terminology, and I'm just trying to remember, Jess probably knows the terminology. It's where someone works really, really hard and then self-sabotage or self-destructs. Do you remember what it's called? The licensing effect.
The licensing effect?
The licensing effect is, I've done really well with my diet this week, therefore I'll eat a pizza. That's the licensing effect. I've worked really hard and I've got ahead financially, therefore I'll buy myself something. It's counterproductive to the goals that you have, and that's because normally the outcome is the thing that's driving you versus the work and the progress. So when you wake up and your goal is to become a better man or a better woman, and you're focused on your habits, and you're focused on your behaviors and your thoughts, it never ends. So you just wake up and you're like, man, I'm just here to be better today.
Yeah.
Man, that's it. That's the goal of life. It's not about achieving something.
Yeah.
So I get all these people, like I've got a McLaren and Audi R8 and stuff at the moment, and people are like, man, it must be so cool to have those cars. I'm like, they're just a fucking car. Like, I think it's cool because it sets a standard.
Yeah.
When I rock up somewhere, I'm like, this is my standards, motherfucker. I don't have it because it validates me as a person. That's the reason why people get scared. Like, it was Grant Cardone said, a millionaire is one of the worst people to learn off of, or something like that. And what he was really saying is, like, people work hard because $1 million is like their goal and their ambition.
Yeah.
But when they get to $1 million, they start playing safe. They play on the back foot.
So true.
Whereas when you're on the way up, you're hungry.
Yep.
I had that exact same. I heard Grant say that years ago, and I was like, "Fuck Grant." And then I got there, and I was like, "Shit, man, we got to start conserving energy. Like, where am I going to invest my money? What happens if I lose it?"
You lose your edge.
100%.
You know, like when you were on that way to $1 million, you were fucking savage, bro.
I was.
But then as soon as you get to that, you're like, okay, now I got to play safe.
Yep.
And like, you know, you're 41, right?
41.
You just turned 41.
Yep.
So like, you're in no place to want to slow down. Like you're, you know, like you want to hunt right now.
Oh, everything's clicking together. I didn't realize it though. So I was in my you know, early 30s when I clicked the $1 million. But then all that happened was I just capped out. Like every year was just like million and a half, 1.8, 1.2, and we just sort of, and I was like, we were making good money, right? So profit was great, but it was just, I'd wake up in the morning, I'm like, oh fuck, got to deal with all these problems again.
Yeah.
I just became a little bitch.
Without the right circle and without the right coach, you can get numb.
Yep.
Like you hit that $1 million mark, and then for the next like 3, 4, 5 years, you were doing around the same numbers, no crazy growth, because you didn't have somebody there to be like zoom out of your situation and be like, bro, you've been in the same spot for the past 5 years.
Yes.
Like it's time to do something a little bit different. I want to ask you something else.
Yeah.
So you were talking about identity, the 3 pillars of the identity, right?
Mm-hmm.
Daily habits. Is that how you fix that? Or what's the, you know, I kind of continue where you were headed with that, because it sounded like you were about to get into some interesting stuff. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. So where I was getting at with that part there is you have your stories, your beliefs, and your meanings.
Mm-hmm.
So there's something called Hebb's law, circuits in the brain that fire together, wire together. So when we have a meaning around something, and I guess that's how we learn as a child, right? So you show a child an apple and you go, apple or apple. And the child goes, huh? Because it has, those neurons aren't wired to mean anything yet.
Yeah.
But when you give the child a taste of it and then you say the word, the child goes, the taste now is related to the look, to the visual representation of it. Mm-hmm. So we have the taste, the look, and the sound. And so those things start firing in our brain. Essentially what our identity is it's a whole bunch of stories, beliefs, and meanings that we start to, and characteristics that we start to label that all interlink. So someone will say to me, and they're normally through I am statements. So it's like, I am this way. So I am confident. Or, you know, I meet a lot of people that
I am lazy.
Yeah. But all they are is just a bunch of stories, beliefs, and meanings that you keep firing and wiring in your brain. Mm-hmm. When you fire a circuit, it's the same as grabbing a weight and just working out your right arm.
Yeah.
If you've ever looked at tennis players, and this blows my mind about psychology and neuroscience, right? Like people say, well, you know, depression is this chemical imbalance. And yes, in very fucking rare cases, someone has a chemical imbalance that is potentially genetic, or it's caused from some form of trauma. Like if you kick a dude hard enough in the balls, they may have trouble with their testosterone levels if they get damaged in that area.
Yeah.
Now, you've seen in professional athletes that cop a lot of head injuries. That then can change their neurochemistry. Yes, I get that.
I like how you say very rare cases. Because where you're going with this, I 100% agree.
These days, it's like there's a fat dude on the couch that doesn't do anything, who's a lazy piece of shit, and now he's depressed. No shit.
And then they give him antidepressants. Oh. The cycle continues. I think the rule for that, if like you come in, they should be like, okay, how often do you work out? Who are you hanging out with?
You're part of Elliott Army. You're like, go get a 6-pack first.
Yeah, exactly.
I agree though, but
go get a 6-pack, go make a shit ton of money, and then come back. And if you're still depressed, then we'll prescribe the antidepressants.
I agree.
You know,
there's a lot of things. Like I have worked with a lot of these people who are depressed and stuff over the years, or have been diagnosed with depression. I'm not saying that that's my field of expertise. It is not.
Yeah.
But what I have is people who come in and they're like, you know what, I feel like shit, I'm depressed, I've been diagnosed, I'm on this medication, whatever. And I go, right, let's fix your shit up first, right? So where are we slacking? Where are we falling apart? Mm-hmm. And then what you'll find is they have a bunch of areas that they're not living up to their standards. Now, you've got standards, and then you have unrealistic expectations that people set. So someone looks at me, right? 41 years of age, 2 supercars, nice house, married, all that shit. Traveling around the world now, like in the US.
Yeah.
And they go, I'm 21 years of age, and I'm a loser piece of shit because I don't have a supercar, I'm not married, I'm not traveling the world and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
I wasn't either. But they'll create these unrealistic expectations based on what Sigmund Freud, the famous psychoanalyst, called implanted values. And he called it the superego.
Implanted values.
Implanted values, which essentially is when you look up to other people, you grab their values and you pull them down onto yours. And that happens, right? So when you're a child, you're driven by 2 things, fear and impulse.
Fear and impulse.
Yes.
Till what age?
Born, right? Newborn child. You go, my stomach hurts, I need food. Now, if you keep feeding a child, they'll keep eating. You give them sugar, they'll keep eating it. So then what happens is the authority figure comes in and says, don't eat chocolate, it's bad for you. And you go, okay, they seem to be more intelligent, more aware, they're bigger, and I trust these people. That's a parental figure, right? What you're doing is you're grabbing their values and you're pulling their values down over the top of your values. Then you go to school and the teacher says, you have to be good at school or you've got to get a good education. If not, you don't get a good job. And you're like, shit, they seem smart, they're intelligent, they're older than me. You grab their values.
So you're kind of like a collection. You just like grab what you want from people.
Yes.
Right.
Anytime we look up to someone, we actually cast down our values and we prioritize other people's values. And most people don't know this. The internal voices that we have inside of our own head are essentially dialogue from the judgments and the criticisms that we believe we're going to cop from the people that we look up to. So let's say you're about to eat a bunch of chocolate and Andy, Andy's here and you're like, fuck, Andy's going to judge me. And you're like, but I really want the chocolate. That's your impulses in conflict with implanted values. And those two things are conflicting with each other.
So your impulse was eat the chocolate. Your implanted values were Andy's going to judge me.
Authority figure, right? Yes.
Yep.
What Sigmund Freud spoke about was that when we have those internal voices in our head that are making us feel judged or criticized or where we feel guilty or ashamed, they normally come from implanted values of an authority figure. And it might be someone from when we're young. So if you're at school and there's the cool kid and the cool kid goes, you're fat, you're like, fuck, maybe I am fat. Maybe that's why I'm not part of the cool kids. That's an implanted value. That value, though, may be with you for your whole entire life and you not even realize it. So those implanted values can put you down. So your own internal judgments of yourself are normally not your judgments, they're from others. But they're there to stop impulses. Now, the other thing is fear. So children are scared of loud noises and falling. So if you bang a table around a newborn baby, it'll scare it. If you hold the newborn baby and you let it fall, it'll scare. Most other things it's not scared of, right? So it's not scared of dying in a car crash. It's not scared of flying in planes. It's not scared of any of that shit because it doesn't understand it.
Freaking bungee jumping in Australia.
Definitely not scared of those. Over time, we develop fears. They normally come from other people or environmental factors where we learn things. Now, those fears then get counterbalanced by implanted values, but those implanted values are people that we look up to. And you'll have this, right? You go, oh, I don't want to make sales calls today. Like, I'm just feeling tired. I'm feeling down. You're like, shit, if I don't do that, then I'm going to be judged by Andy or the crew or the Elliott Army. Fuck, I better do it. What's happening is those implanted values are there because they're encouraging you to push against your fears. Our brain counterbalances itself all the time. We just don't realize that it's doing it. So impulses are judged from fears and criticisms of implanted values, and fears, we normally look up to somebody and go, what would they do in that experience? And that helps us to conquer our own fears.
I love that.
So, and when we look up to other people, we're pulling their values down onto us. When we look down upon people, we're pushing our values onto them. So a lot of this stuff that's going on inside of our head all day long are battling against fears and impulses on one side with the implanted values of others, either looking up to people or looking down on others. But anyway, I've gone off track a little bit here, but I just thought that's
you're putting on a little mindset master class right now.
So this stuff, by the way, you very rarely, like I have psychologists, medical doctors and stuff like that. When I go through this work, they're like, shit, I've heard about Freud, but never really studied his work. I've studied his work in depth to understand this stuff, and I'm like, holy shit, this gives a whole new insight into human behavior and human behavior patterns.
So what I'm hearing, and this is my opinion, I want to hear your take on this too, but in order to change someone's identity, they need new people around them, new information, and new experiences. What are your thoughts on that? Do you agree with that? I think what you're saying is, like, if someone wanted to get a better life, they wanted to raise their standards, they just go hang out with people who have authority over them. That way they get those implanted values, and then they can become that person. Is that right?
Yes, that's one way of doing it. The other thing is, what about, and this is my belief, what about if your greatness is already in there? But what about if the implanted values and your impulses and fears, those three things themselves are stopping you from being great? Because you go to do something, you're like, oh man, it's too hard. I'm just going to eat that chocolate. I'm just going to eat the shit. Oh man, I spoke about eating, what was it, a chocolate? The
cheese roll.
The cheese roll last night when I was at the hotel and they put it in front of me. I was like, oh man, I'm doing it. But anyway, I felt like shit this morning from that. But my point is, what about if those impulses, if you just learn how to control those impulses realize that most of your fears are bullshit anyway and they're not going to happen, and you remove the implanted values, because part of the implanted values, right, they're there from a young age to stop us doing stupid shit. Because if you just allow a child who has no real regulation of its emotions, if you just allowed it to a child to be driven by fear and impulses and not have an authority figure, most children would die. So we need an authority figure to show us the way, to tell us that if we eat too much chocolate, we're going to feel like crap. We're not going to be able to regulate our emotions. We're going to be volatile. So we need to have those implanted values. But the problem is that this is my belief. I believe that from a young age, we lose ourselves in order to spend the rest of our life finding ourselves again. If we're able to just deal with those implanted values and go, you know what, my parents are still going to love me no matter what I do, providing I try my best. And if they don't, that's on them, not on me.
Yeah.
Then we don't have to impress our parents anymore. Because the only reason why we try to impress our parents is because we're used to their implanted values. They think that navigating the world in their values is the right way.
We have a scope.
Yep.
Like we're programmed to think like our parents, like through the eyes of what are my parents going to think?
Yeah.
What's everybody around me going to think?
My mum's value, and I had this conflict probably about 10 years ago with my mum. My mum used to think that if I didn't spend time with family, my life would be shit. Now, my mum's highest value over the last maybe 10 to 20 years is family.
Yeah.
But my highest value isn't family. My highest value is teaching, learning, and coaching. I love doing this sort of stuff. I love teaching others. I love helping others. I love coaching others. I love learning off of others.
Define highest value. Because that sounds like, I've never heard that before. I mean, I can assume what it means, but it sounds like it's probably a pillar of your training that you put people through. Is that something you help people do, is like define their highest value?
Yeah.
And is that important for people to figure out what that is?
It's hard because a lot of the things that are taught about values are taught incorrectly. The field of study of values is called axiology. Axiology is two fields of study. You have philosophy. Philosophy asks the question, where are you most valuable? Where do you feel the most value, right? Now, where we feel the most value is normally doing the things that are most important to us. And if you look at a person's behavior, they demonstrate it. So I already know that you work your ass off.
Yeah.
So, and you smiled when you did it. So that's a dead giveaway and you nod your head straight away. So work or career advancement or progression is probably one of your top 2 or 3 values.
Absolutely.
Now, people say to me, they come to my events and they're like, family's my highest value. And I go, bullshit. And they go, nope, it is. And they go, I'll do anything for my family. And I go, I understand that. But we're talking about 2 different things. One is a survival response. So if you look at Maslow's hierarchy, down the bottom you have the survival needs. Up the top, you have self-actualization.
Yeah.
Now, in survival, if someone said, like, to me, teaching, coaching, and learning is my highest value.
Yeah.
But right now, if you had a heart attack, I would stop doing this in order to save your life.
Your health would be your highest value.
Not so much, but it's just in an environment where you're having a heart attack, I'm going to go to survival mode, which is to save your life. That doesn't mean it's my highest value. It's just my primary concern is survival and making sure you're okay. Now, people think that if my kids were sick, and parents always go to the worst case scenario, they're like, yeah, but if my kids were dying, I would give up everything for them. I'm like, yeah, but they're not fucking dying. Every day you don't wake up and go, shit, my kids could die today, therefore I better not do anything else apart from spend time with them. Yeah. That's not how we work. That's not how we operate. So if we want to get out of survival, we can't think like that. The truth is, what do we prioritize every day of our, like every day of the week, what do we prioritize? Now, if I looked at your life as a month, what's 90% of your time doing?
Grinding.
So career, right?
Yeah.
So career is probably your highest value.
Probably, yeah.
Yep. Now people go, yeah, but my relationship, and if you spend 90% of your life working, your highest value is career or career progression. So if you look at my life, I'm always doing podcasts, running seminars, running events, learning. I mean, we met at Patrick Bett's event, right?
Yep.
I'm learning. I travel the world to learn.
Yep.
So if you have a look at where I spend most of my money and spend most of my time and invest most of my money and invest most of my time, it's in teaching, coaching, learning, right? Yeah. The other morning, I got up at 1 o'clock in the morning in order to run a coaching call into Australia, which is one of my groups. So between 1 and 3, and then I had a business coaching call with my community between 3 and 5. I don't do that if it's not important to me. It's everything to me.
So do you decide what your highest value is, or do your actions show what your highest value is?
Your actions demonstrate your values. That's why when a parent says to me, my kids are my highest value, and I go, bullshit, you work 80 hours a week. Yeah. They are not your highest value.
So if someone's eating Twinkies on the couch 80 hours a week,
healthy,
that means their highest value is comfort and Twinkies?
You have to ask them, what's the purpose of it? So this is a hypothetical, and I can only give a hypothetical answer from a hypothetical question. If I've got a legitimate question with a legitimate, there'll be a legitimate answer. But let's say I'll have someone come to my event and they're like, I'll actually give you a real life example, right? This guy's recently said to me, money is my highest priority. Like I'm always working for money. And I go, how much money do you have? And he's like, I'm fucking broke. What does that tell you straight away?
He's not good at working. I don't know.
Well, his money's not his highest value. Because if money's your highest value, you'd have a shit ton of money.
You'd have money. Yeah.
I mean, we all know like a 21-year-old kid that makes like $20 million a year, and like, how the fuck do they do that?
Yeah.
Because that's their highest value.
Yeah.
You can ask them, how did you make that much money? And they can tell you the strategy. So one of my friends, his name's Toby Pierce. He's come and spoken at some of my events and things like that. This guy is a genius. Now, for him, at the age of 29, he sold a company for $400 million. He bought that company back 2 years later. Actually, it was this year. He bought the company back. And supposedly, I haven't spoken to him, but supposedly we bought it back for $100 million. And he's building it again. He runs businesses. When you listen to him, the dude just spits business knowledge.
I love it.
Now, you could say, what's your highest value? You're already not, because his life demonstrates it. I could do exactly what he's done and still not make that amount of money. Right? Yeah. A lot of the time when people ask you questions, like you ask a jack dude at the gym, they're like, I focus on my diet, I eat clean all the time, I go to the gym all the time. Okay, now you take, everyone knows that answer, right? Yeah. But can you follow through on it? And the answer is probably not for most people. Yeah. Why? Because it's not their values. Kids are sick, I had to go away for the weekend, I forgot to meal prep. That's because what they're really saying is other shit got in the way. It's not my highest value.
Yeah.
So to come back to the question, what are values? The field of study of axiology answers two questions. Number one, where do I perceive that what I do on a regular basis is the most valuable thing that I can do that makes me feel valued as a person? So it's like a philosophical question. Like, where do I feel? I feel like, to me, this is valuable.
Got it.
So I don't go to bed at night and go, fuck, I wasted the whole day doing podcasts. I'm like, hell yeah, I did podcast today. Boom.
Exactly. You're going to spend time doing what you feel is important.
Yep.
And what gives you like self-worth.
That's where worth comes from, right? Worth comes from value. And so our values create our worth. So that's number one. Number two is, the second part is economics. Where am I valuable? Now, I don't get to dictate where I'm valuable. Society tell me where I'm valuable. So I run seminars and events and do shit like this. And probably some of these answers, you're sitting here going, this guy's spitting shit that I haven't heard before. That's because that's where my value is. Now, this stuff just rolls off my tongue. I could sit here all day long. Like if you ask Jess, my wife, you go like,
bro, you're going in right now.
Could he literally talk for like 100 hours? And I run events. Some of my events are 7 days long. In 7 days, at the end of it, we start at 10 o'clock in the morning, and some of them we finish at 10 o'clock at night.
Yeah.
At the end of the 7 days, Jess will say to me, fucking hell, you still got a lot of work to get through. And I'm like, I'll get it done.
You're like, this is my highest value.
Yeah. I'll always get it done, and I always deliver what I say I'm going to deliver, especially when it comes to teaching coaching.
I love that.
But if someone said to me, could you keep going? Like I have people say all the time, like, how do you get this stuff to teach?
Yeah.
I can literally do a 7-day event and go, fuck, there's like 90% of things that I wanted to say, I still didn't get to say.
Yeah.
You could branch that out to 14, 21 days. I could run a 30-day seminar.
Yeah.
From 10 to 10. Yeah. And I would still have info, because this is the shit that I love.
So for anybody watching, what do your events teach? Like if somebody were to come to like a 4-day event or do your coaching, like what's the point A to point B?
So really, I've been trying to define this for a long time, because I can say like mindset, but what is mindset?
Yeah.
What outcome does it produce, right? Like everyone knows mindset's important, but what does it produce? Mm-hmm. Then, a few people have gone like, you're the personal development guy. Like, and then some people just call me the fucking guru or whatever. Really what I teach is leadership, because in order to navigate life, we have to be able to lead others. Right. And I had this conversation with Andy, right? He was going into it and he brought up some good points for me that I got to tighten up as well. But the key thing is, right, like if we're going to do well in the world, first things first is all leadership is self-leadership. People watch what you do, they don't listen to what you say.
That. Yeah.
So the first thing is you got to get yourself right. So how do you think? That's the most important thing, is how you think. Because everything starts here. So if you understand what I call the causal chain, we start here. These things here, the way that we perceive the world around us it essentially changes our chemical responses in our body, hormonally, neurochemically, and so on.
Yeah.
So then from there we have emotions. Our emotions drive our behavior. So our behavior and our daily actions are a byproduct of the chemicals that we consistently produce based on the perceptions that we consistently have, which you could say are our thoughts, which really come down to our beliefs, our stories, and our meanings, right? Which is where I started.
Yeah.
So we essentially have these thoughts. These thoughts create these beliefs, these stories and meanings. They flood our body, change our neurochemistry or our chemistry, our hormonal states. That gives us feelings. Those feelings drive our behavior. Our behaviors then drive our thoughts again. Our thoughts then drive our emotions. And after a while, now we create an identity, which we're sort of alluding to before, right? We have this identity or this character. So now when I describe people, I describe them in what I perceive are their actions and the behaviors that I see, but that's all driven from the consistency of their emotions and their thoughts. So really, all leadership is self-leadership, number one. We have to master self before we can help others master self. Then the second thing is our job then is to lead others and the way that they master themselves. So whether it be your kids, like I have a lot of people come to my events and they're like, I just want to be a better leader. And I'm like, I know you do, because you got kids. They're watching what you do. They don't listen to what you say. You say don't eat the chocolate, and then they're like, look, mum's stuffing her face with chocolate.
Exactly.
They're going to want more chocolate. They just replicate.
Yeah.
Dad says don't do this, but he does it. Like, I ask most parents, do you want your kids to be alcoholics? They say no. Say, do you come home every night and smash a beer? Yeah, but... And then they justify it. Yeah, but, it's... And they're watching what you do.
Dude, Andy says this all the time. He says you can't duplicate what you're not.
Yes.
So if you want your kid to be an NBA player or a famous entrepreneur, but you're an alcoholic and an average person, then that kid, as he develops and he develops his own thoughts and his own, beliefs about reality, he's going to go find someone else to look up to be his mentor, right?
I'm going to say something that's probably going to fucking annihilate this whole thread, and I'm going to get murdered for this, but anyway, bro. It is what it is.
Here we go.
You do not love your kids unless you love yourself.
Yeah.
Because how can you give something that you do not have? And so if you're judging yourself and criticizing yourself and blaming yourself and beating yourself up, and you're slipping all the time and you hate yourself and you're questioning yourself all the time, you can't then sift through and go, oh, there's my kids. I love them. You're sitting there like, fuck, how do I deal with, like, I've got all this inner shit going on. Going back to Maslow's hierarchy, right? Like if you're in survival, you can't self-actualize. Now, if you're having the worst fucking day of your life, you can't just get home from work and just be like, oh, there's my kids, bang, switched off. You don't do that. You walk in the front door and you've got all that shit there. Parents sit there and they say, I spend time with my kids. And I'm like, what do you mean spend time with your kids? And they're like, well, like we'll sit around and we watch TV. And I'm like, hang on. What you're saying is you distract yourself because you're so fucking stressed and you can't deal with the shit that's going on in your head. You're probably on your mobile phone doing this, trying to distract yourself because you're trying to get out of your emotional shit that you can't deal with. And so now you're sitting there, you're drinking your beer, you're flicking through like this, and you got drool running out the side of your mouth, and you're sitting there like this. And you're going, I'm spending time with my kids. Are you? And then they look at someone else who's extremely driven, who spends 1 hour a night with their kids, or maybe even half an hour. That parent who spends half an hour with their kids, who is dialed in, switched on, who can switch this shit off and go, right, we're eating dinner now, and they just switch off, everything goes away. They probably are spending more quality time and are more connected with their kids than the person who's sitting there eating dinner like this in front of the TV.
Agreed.
Right?
A lot of people are mindless.
Yes.
Anywhere they go. Like they'll hit the gym, they'll work for the full day, and go home with their family. That's what they think. They go, oh man, I hit the gym today, I worked for 8 hours, and then I spent 3 hours with my family.
Yes.
But really the whole time their mind was somewhere else. So they never even really got anything in. Yeah.
So the key thing is, right, like if we come back to it, and this is, you asked me the question, what is it that I do? I work as a leadership coach. That's really what I do. But all leadership is self-leadership. So if we want to be better parents, I'm not a parent, so I just want to put that out there. I'm not a parent, not to my own children. I'm a parent to a lot of adults that are like children, right? Because I got a big community, and a lot of adults come in and act and behave like children, and I teach them how to, be responsible and
be driven mofos.
Let's go. But all great leadership is self-leadership. So we have to lead ourselves first so that we can love others. We have to love ourselves so that we can love others. Mm-hmm. We have to believe in ourselves so that we can believe in others. We have to encourage ourselves so we can encourage others.
Exactly.
We have to master what goes on in here so we can help others do the same thing. Like I have a team and they come to me and they're like, oh, I fucked up a sale. I feel really bad. And I'm like, hey, it doesn't matter. It's one fucking sale. Doesn't matter. Right? Let's figure out what's going on. I have to encourage them. I have to be calm. I have to lead the way. Right? They're going to have all the doubt. They're going to have all the fears. They're going to have the stress. I have to show them that that's not the path. Yeah. That's the path of the average mediocre. That's not my path. That's not their path. They're better than that. So
you know what that's called?
What's that?
Influence.
I like that.
That's one of the pillars of leadership, right?
Nice. Yes.
It's influence. Because that's what you're doing. If you're going to grow, grow like a big team, then you're going to have influence over them because they're going to come in with a certain set of meanings, beliefs, and what was the other one?
Stories,
meanings, and beliefs that the rest of the world has given them. And then your job is to influence all of those things, right?
100%. And I think this is what you asked before about the dude who was sitting there, right, eating the Cheetos or whatever, the fat dude on the couch and who's all depressed and stuff. The thing is that guy has a story about his life, right? Like, I'm not successful because I can't go to the gym because they're all of his stories, his beliefs, and his meanings. Now, maybe his parents gave him that. Maybe that was his influence. Maybe that's what he saw. Maybe he also had a parent, because sometimes what will happen in family dynamics, which I studied a lot of, right? In family dynamics, if you put too much pressure on a child, they might flip and reverse and do the opposite. So sometimes in family hierarchies or family structures, people either replicate or they do the complete opposite. They go, my mum was like this, therefore I'm not going to be like her, so they do the complete opposite.
Yes.
Both of those two things aren't the right way, though.
Yeah.
The right way is a center point. So if you look at yin and yang, the ancient Chinese philosophy, and I've done a lot of study on philosophy. If you look at yin yang, there's a balance point, right? Mm-hmm. So doing the opposite normally isn't the best thing. Like sometimes people go, well, I'm broke, therefore I'm going to get super fucking rich.
Yeah.
But then what they do is they get super rich in order to try to prove a point to get some form of validation. But they don't get any validation from the people around them because they're a fucking asshole.
Exactly.
And now they just work for money. Yep. Going from having no friends because you're broke and thinking, well, I'm broke, I'm the poor kid, I don't have any money, I'm going to become the super wealthy guy that just, does whatever it takes and win at all costs. You do shit like that, you're still going to have no friends. You've just gone from being a broke asshole to a rich asshole. In the middle, though, there's somewhere where it's like, you know what? I have purpose, I have intention. Now, I've met both, right? I've met people that are broke who are assholes because they think that anyone with money is a shithead and they rip people off, which is probably partially true because they meet the other asshole, which is like, I'm super rich and I'm going to win at all costs. I actually had a friend of mine. This is really, I'm glad we're going down this path. A friend of mine, he was the ex-head of Air Asia. He's actually one of our clients. He's done some of our events and stuff. So I was speaking to him and he said, I asked him, I said, what's been your biggest learning lately? Like, I hadn't seen him for about 6 months. And I normally ask this question when I haven't seen someone for a while. I'm like, what's your biggest learning?
Yeah.
And he said, my idea with winning was wrong. And I said, what does that mean? And he said, well, I used to think that I needed to win at all cost. But he said, here's the thing. I realized that you can win a battle, you can win a war, you can win a moment, or you can win life. And I was like, ooh, that's deep.
It's good.
Yeah. And he said, what I was doing was I was winning battles because I thought that that's what I had to do. And he said I'd win at all cost. But what I didn't realize was actually that I was losing at the exact same moment that I was winning.
Yeah.
And he said, what I had to realize is sometimes you're better off just to take the loss and it's not that big a deal.
Yeah.
And so sometimes you can lose an argument with a friend to keep the friendship and it doesn't matter. It's not that big a deal.
Yeah.
Right? Because the friendship is more important than you being right.
Yeah.
Sometimes, letting a customer get away with something isn't that big a deal. Mm-hmm. And it'll keep the customer long term versus just getting it over in the moment.
It's thinking long term instead of in the short term. Thinking without your ego.
100%.
Like momentarily you want your ego to win. Long term, screws up a relationship.
Something you're saying is really interesting, right? Because do you know the word ego, what it means? Have you ever studied the etymology of words?
Dude, probably not as much as you, bro.
After this, you're going to study something called etymology, right? And you can go online and type in etymologyonline.com. And what it does is it shows you the meaning of words. I look them up all the time because what it does is it gives you an insight into human behavior that you wouldn't believe. So Marcus Aurelius, in his book, right, Meditations, all of these people read that book, right? All the greatest speakers and shit, and they're like, Marcus Aurelius said this. But they misreference it. So the word passion means to suffer. Marcus Aurelius in Meditations said, avoid the passions. He specifically uses that term, avoid the passions. Most motivational speakers go, Marcus Aurelius, they quote all of his shit, but then they say, follow your passions. Do not follow your passions. Passion means to suffer. The word ego means the true self. So it means the I. When you're saying the ego, what you're talking about is actually implanted values. And so when we have implanted values, it's something that Freud called the superego. And that's the over-exaggerated self. So when we perceive that we're being judged, we over-exaggerate ourselves. So you know, like animals, when they're afraid, they puff their chest up.
Yeah.
So
that's good, dude.
Have you ever been around people and you're like, man, I made like 10 grand this week. And they're like, man, I made 11.
Yeah.
And then you're like, you know what? I just ran 8Ks and they're like, or 8 miles. And they're like, yeah, man, that's pretty good, but I did 12.
Yeah.
They just always have to one up you.
Yeah.
That's just this. Exactly. That's a fear response. Most people don't know, and I love this about leadership and human behavior, right? There's a perfect balance point that all humans exist in. Sometimes when people are challenged and fearful, they'll over-exaggerate. That over-exaggeration is actually a fear response. So when I meet people, like, because I get asked, how do you work with all these like super successful people? Why do you think someone over-exaggerates their wealth? They're scared.
Yeah.
They're scared. There's a little, inside of every man, there's a little boy.
Yeah.
And that little boy has fears. I have fear, right? Do you think that these muscles aren't there because what it's doing is it's counterbalancing your internal fears?
Yeah.
So I fear being a little guy because when I was a kid, I was little.
Yeah.
So I learned if I get muscles, not only did I pick up chicks, but also it makes me feel stronger about myself. Now, I'm not saying that it's a bad thing, but it's actually counterbalancing fear.
Yeah, that's a good point, dude.
The value comes from the void or the sense of missingness.
You remember the hierarchy of frequency Patrick and David talked about?
Yeah.
That's what it reminds me of.
Yes.
Like ego and fear fall at the same place, which is towards the bottom of the frequency ladder, right?
Providing the word ego is the correct ego. He's talking about the exaggerated self, though.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's the implanted value, the super ego. I just like to use the correct terminology. And the only reason why I say this, because Jess pulls me up on it. She's like, why do you care so much about the words? I don't, right? People can call a fucking orange a lemon. I couldn't care.
Yeah.
But the thing is that when you start to read a lot of the old philosophies, they don't make sense and you don't understand them unless you understand the languaging behind them. So like some of them will say things like avoid compassion, because the word compassion comes, the root word is passion. Passion means to suffer. Compassion means to suffer with others. Now, why do we suffer with others when we're compassionate? Because when we're compassionate, we have old wounds or things that have hurt us in the past. And I see you going through them and it brings it up. And I go, you must feel bad because it makes me feel bad seeing you go through that thing. It actually brings up our shit. Now, the question is, should I feel bad because you're going through things and you're having the experience of feeling bad? If I've worked through them, I know that the bad things also have good things attached to them because everything in the universe is in balance.
Yeah.
So, like, I got asked on a podcast a while ago, someone said, if you could go back and see the bullies who picked on you as a kid, what would you say to them? And I looked them in the eyes and I said, thank you.
Thank you, I owe you.
I am the man I am today because of those people.
Hell yeah, bro.
The kid at school who said, you know, you're poor.
What do you call you?
Pov.
A pov.
Pov.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm rich.
That was like the 2000s slang for brokey.
It was. Pov. I never thought of it like that, but it's true. You know, the kids who call me fat. Thank you. You know, all of this shit is because of them. So I have nothing against them.
I'm gonna go back to where you started. Victor or victim? That was like the first thing you said.
I'm not the sort of guy who suggests that we should go out there and someone tells you that you're fat and you go, I'm going to prove you wrong. Hey, if you got to do that in order to get in shape, fuck yeah, go do it, right?
Yeah.
That'll be your starting point, but that won't be the thing that gets you to the end point. Totally. The end point will be, I'm doing this because of me.
Self-love.
Yeah.
The anger will start it, but the self-love is what will make you see it through.
Amen.
To its accomplishment. All right, I got one more question for you. Where did you start? Like, when did you start studying the mind, bro? Because, like, I can tell you put a lot of hours into this stuff. And why did you start studying it?
Well, I mean, look, it starts for all of us at birth, right? But the thing is that most of us, I was a dipshit and I wasn't aware of it.
Yeah.
So from a young age, I remember being with my parents. I remember looking up at the stars and just wondering about why we're here. So I think that started happening like around age 8. But here's the thing. I went through school. I tried to fit in, didn't fit in, got kicked out of school when I was 15. And then I was like, man, that's it. I'm done here. I don't fit in at school. I'm in trouble all the time at home. Man, I'm going to end this. I'm going to end this fucking bullshit. And I was going to end my life at 15.
Wow.
And then I remember tears rolling down my face, just sitting there, bawling my eyes out because I didn't want to die, but I didn't want to fucking live. And I remember having this big kitchen knife sitting there that was sharp and it was pressed against my skin. And I was like, I just remember getting so angry with myself that I allowed other people to dictate my own value. And I grabbed the knife and I threw it across the room and it cut the blinds in my room. And I just remember this street light like shining through the thing. And I don't reference it to like any religious iconology or anything like that, but I just remember sitting there just going like, this is bullshit. How the fuck did I allow other people to determine my value?
Yeah.
It was like that moment was a moment that clicked. The next one was when I was 21. My best friend's 3-year-old niece who we used to look after was killed in a car accident. And man, if you ever want a life-changing moment, watch a coffin that's about that big just being put into the ground.
Yeah.
And you just go, man, life can just be taken away just like this.
Yeah.
And in the moment, I was standing there at the funeral, obviously, you know, sad and feeling pretty shit about life. I just remember watching this coffin and just going, what's the purpose of my life? How am I here? How am I going to be remembered when I'm not here? Those questions drove me for the next 12 to 24 months. And then where it really started was I'd gone through this breakup with a girlfriend around about 20, 21 or something like that, 22. And I was living back at home with my parents. And myself and my mum never got along because we're both the same. She's super driven, I'm driven. And I just remember sitting there just going, this is bullshit. I was told later that I had chronic fatigue as well, which I didn't realize at the time. But I'm sitting there, I got night sweats, and it's like 1 o'clock in the morning, and I'd be been out drinking and shit. And I'm just lying there, and this guy comes on TV, and he's like, you can change your life. And then there's Oprah Winfrey, and she's like, this guy changed my life. And I was like, you know, late night TV, I'd never bought into that bullshit. And for some weird reason, just in that moment, I was like, you know what, something's got to fucking change. And this is why I think the job that we do is so important, because most of the time people don't reach out to guys like us when everything's going well. Like, very rarely do I, like, hey man, I'm crushing it in business.
So true.
Let's move up. It's like, my business is falling apart. Hey man, cash flow sucks. My relationship's about to fall apart. Like, people reach out when they're at that point. And that night, I was like, you know what, something's got to change. And I got out of bed. I was like 21, 22. I think I had a mobile phone, but couldn't make international calls on it. I had to walk out to the kitchen knowing that I had to call this 1-300 number to the States from Australia. It was like fucking $10 a minute.
Who was
or
the
something
guy?
Stupid.
Was it Tony Robbins?
It was Tony Robbins.
Damn.
So I get out of bed. I call this number. Before I called the number, the program was $229. I looked in my bank account. It was the start of like dial-up internet online banking.
Yeah.
I look in my bank account. There was $230. The program was $229. But here's the thing that changed my life. It was the ability to make a fucking decision in the moment that I needed it.
Yeah.
And for you out there who are sitting there listening and going, I got to change my life, you're one decision away from changing it, but most of you won't make that fucking decision. I had to decide that morning whether I was going to put fuel in my car to get to work the next morning, or whether I was going to buy that program.
Yeah.
And I bought that program. And then I had to figure out how to go get money to put fuel in my car. Now I had to go borrow money. I still got to work, but I had to borrow money to get to work. Most of you motherfuckers won't do that. That's why you're not where you want to be. Yeah. Right? And I still do that to this day, right? In order to do this US trip, I had to pull cash out of my home loan and shit like that. We maxed out a credit card, like all of that shit. Not because I don't have money, like I could sell my supercar. But the thing is, like, are you prepared? If you want to go to the next level, you're one decision away, but you won't make that decision because it makes you fucking uncomfortable. And that's the reason why you won't go there. But that's where the growth happens. It always happens in that one decision you're putting off.
Dude, you just dropped 2 fucking bombs. Number one, that you finally opened your mind to taking suggestions for the first time.
Mm-hmm.
You were living in this cycle or pattern, like you call it, and you were just kind of getting the same results because you were being the same person.
Yep.
And then one day you're like, you see a guy on TV and you're like, I'll fucking hear him out. And then secondly, one of the skills that I've been talking about lately that I really want to acquire, like I want to have, is influence.
Yep.
That's why I keep talking about it. Because imagine if Tony Robbins had gotten on Oprah Winfrey's stage or show or whatever it was that you watch, and he wasn't influential. If he hadn't influenced your thoughts to give you a new paradigm, to be like, hey, this guy might have some answers that I don't have, you never would have called that number.
I love that. Yes. I never thought about it that way, but that's
so that's why influence is so important, because, you know, like this whole episode you've been talking about implanted values. I think a great speaker, a great coach can shift your perspective, give you a paradigm shift. You know, like when you like Andy always says, eventually one day when you think you're the best, you're going to run into somebody who makes you look like an amateur.
I agree with that 100%.
And whenever you find that person immediately influences you.
Yes.
Because you're like, what are you doing that I'm not doing?
Yes.
You know? But that's cool. And then, yeah, of course, make a decision, man. A lot of people are way too freaking scared, bro. They get paralyzed with fear. And without a decision, dude, nothing changes.
Look, to be honest, every stage of growth that I've gone through, I'm always scared. And I always sit there with the same thoughts that everyone who's watching this goes through, right? Should I do what I'm currently doing and stay comfortably uncomfortable? Or do I get uncomfortable and try something different?
Yeah.
I still go through that same thing. Do you know I put off coming to the US for like the last couple of years?
Really?
Why? Because I was making good money back at home, good profit. I was like, yeah, it was comfortable. But here's the thing. I woke up every day and I was like, I'd look in the mirror and I'm like, you piece of shit.
And you know what you were thinking probably the whole time, which a lot of people think when they don't take action. And eventually it leads to regret. But what you were thinking probably the whole time, what if?
I was thinking, what if? And I'd look in the mirror and I'm like, you piece of shit. Because I deep down inside knew that, I had built a company that was financially stable.
Yeah.
Jess, my wife, and myself were making good money. We got a nice house, live on a lake. I got a fucking wicked coffee machine that I make wicked coffee in every morning. I see that. I got a gym at home. And I don't have to change nothing.
And when you want to do something but you don't do it, you lose self-worth. You lose self-respect. Like every time there's an opportunity for you to go to the next level and you don't do anything about it, you lose a little bit of confidence. You lose a little bit of momentum. I mean, think about any run you've ever been on. It was like anytime an opportunity came up, hey, Michael, you can come speak on the stage. You can come sit with this guy. You can come go to this meeting, do this podcast. You were like, count me in.
Yep.
I'm in. That's how you build momentum.
That's all it is, right? It's those decisions, and you're correct, that 100% build momentum. But it was just like, I wasn't letting myself down because I'd already created a great life.
Yeah.
But the thing was, in comparative to what I knew I was capable of, that's where I knew I was slipping.
Yeah.
And so then I just said to my wife, I'm like, this year, I'm either blowing up the company in a good way or I'm blowing it apart in a bad way. But either way, I'm going to have a fucking crack. And that's all we've done. Since then, my energy's gone up. I feel pumped. You know, even it's crazy. We've been on this tour. Yeah. And Jess said to me the other day, she's like, you've lost weight. And I'm like, I have to, because like my diet's been cleaned up. Yeah. Like I notice that when I'm pushing hard, everything just starts to tighten up and like, but when you get comfortable, shit gets uncomfortable, like that Cheeto fingered fat dude that's on the keyboard, right? Typing shit. Look, that guy will have a revelation one day. He's either going to have it before he enters the pearly gates. Yeah. He's going to have it because his wife leaves him and says, I don't respect you anymore. Yeah. He's going to see it in his kids when his kids are all fat and running around like little Oompa Loompas, and he's like, I did that to them. I fucked up their life. Or he's just going to find some way of drowning it out through drugs, alcohol, or food or something, because he's going to be disappointed in himself.
Exactly.
But at some point, there's going to come a moment where he's like, something has to change.
Yeah.
But it's how bad does it have to get before that change? Exactly. And that's the key thing, right? Like, how bad does it have to get? Because you can make the choice now or the decision when it's not that bad. Mm-hmm. Or you can wait until it's really bad and then make that decision. But
don't wait for something bad to happen before you go all in.
Yeah.
All right. Well, hey, guys, thanks for tuning in for another episode.
Most people waste their life, and I just don't want you to be one of them.